come to save the day.
The Mighty House crew is on the job. This is
Mighty House.
We're going to be talking about decking. Today we're going to talk about how to frame that deck out. And if you missed out how to put the posts in, how to do the foundation part, all that's last week, so go back and watch that one if you want to know how to do that part of the deck. So today we're talking framing so it doesn't collapse and you don't end up on the news. And before we talk about this, let's go ahead and click on the bell below and click on the subscribe button and leave us a note below because Rich always wants to know what's in your head and what you're thinking
That's
about.
right. Well, most people. Some people just plain scare me.
And oh, look at that! Are we giving a live shot of the Klein tools?
Absolutely.
So let's go ahead and get started here. We've got the ledger board. We need to attach this to the house. We need to secure it properly to the house so that it doesn't collapse. So this is how the ledger board, and a minimum of a 2x8. Can't use anything smaller than a 2x8 because you need to have
and
this
not
spacing.
secure it properly.
Correct. So you need 2 inches down, 5 inches apart, and then also 3/4 of an inch up. And then this bolt here, you need to be 2 inches in from the end also. So as you look at this and how it's laid out, notice how they don't have them stacked either. The bolts are staggered. So that way they are apart from each other. That way if there is a split in the lumber, it doesn't start to split and continue. This will help prevent that from this one creating a split that goes to this one, and then the whole thing collapses. So if you have them staggered like this, that's a lot stronger, and that way it's going to stay on the house where it belongs.
And we'll get to it, but they need to go through, like if you have a brick house or a brick veneer house, you need to go through the brick to the ledger. So, you know, the inside rim joist, and we've got that coming up, but this is no joke. Whenever you see a deck collapse on the news, 9 times out of 10, it's the ledger that failed.
Correct.
This is probably the most important thing to get right. Now, I'll make another statement as an ex-carpenter, or I'm still a carpenter, I guess.
Yeah, you're always going to be one.
Do your joist layout, you know, get that ledger kind of held up in place, but do your joist layout, because there's nothing worse than putting a bolt right where your next joist goes.
Yeah, or your first joist.
Or your first, that's even worse,
yes. See, that's why that first one's in 2 inches also, so you can get that in
exactly.
there. All right.
But it might interfere with your joist hanger, so then you want to make sure it might go over 2.5. It could be 3.
Correct.
But the whole point is don't put it right at the end, you know, but look at your hardware, look at your deck layout, your joist layout.
Yep.
And then stagger your bolts. So the point is minimum 2 from the top, 3/4 from the bottom, minimum 2 inches in.
And 5 inches apart.
Okay.
So
and that's what I'm talking about. You got to get to the inside part of the house.
Right. So you come all the way through, and you have a bolt going through there, carriage bolted, and then that's a nut and washer. That's my preferred method of doing it. You can use a lag bolt, but you can see it has to go all the way through. And when you go to the spacing part of this, you'll notice that the lag bolts have to be closer together than those that are through bolted and have a nut and bolt on them. So
that's right.
That's how you're going to properly want to secure this ledger to the house. Okay, next up, sonar. There we go. So there's our little chart that we're going to use. So depending on how far your joist span is from the house to the first beam, that's going to determine how far apart those bolts are. The other thing that will do it, whether or not you're using a through bolt, a lag bolt, or a through bolt with washers, that's all going to determine how far apart the ledger is, or how far apart those bolts are. And you can see there, go back to that one last screen there real quick. So if you had a 10-foot 1 to 12-foot span, you're looking at 15
Which
inch
is
spacing.
probably your most common, to be honest.
So you're looking at 15-inch spacing. And then if you're
For
going
the lag bolt.
Yep, that's for a lag bolt. And if you're going to use a 1/2-inch bolt with no washers, it's 29 inches apart. And if you're going to use a 1/2-inch diameter bolt with washers, stacked 1/2-inch washers, then you can go 24. So there's your spacing.
Okay. So now let me back you up again, just because I want to participate. All of this, while you're treated lumber, you need to check it because ACQ is a corrosive treatment. It does not have arsenic in it like the old stuff did.
Right.
But it's very corrosive to metal fasteners. So you either need to use stainless steel bolts and legs, or at the very minimum, double dipped galvanized.
Right.
So you'll see a lot of times things say galvanized bolt, but you want to make sure it's double dip galvanized. And you can tell usually double dip because they're chunkier and not as purty.
Right.
But because it's ACQ, the preservative is so corrosive to metal, you have to be very careful what you use to put it all together.
Right. You need to use the right type of metal fasteners too. You can't
Exactly.
can't just use a regular lag
I'm always
bolt.
the bad news guys. Why am I always the bad news guys? I just keep complaining. All right.
I don't know. So how are we going to support this? We're coming off of our piers, our foundation, again from last week, our foundation piers. Now we can put either a 4x4 in or a 6x6. And a lot of this is going to depend on the structure, how it's framed. Your architect may drive what the size of that post is going to be. But also, how do you secure that? You need one of these right here.
Right. So last week we talked about the concrete foundations using sonotubes, doing blocks, all types of different types of concrete sort of bases. But what you don't want to do is put a post directly on the concrete and have it wick up water from the bottom. So these strong tie bases, it bolts directly to your concrete pier.
Right through there.
You slide down that cap that covers your bolt. Then you set your 4x4 or 6x6 post on top of that. And you can see all the nailing opportunities you have. And most inspectors require you to fill every hole.
Yep.
They're not there as a suggestion. It's part of the design process.
And what kind of nails?
But joist hanger nails, double dip galvanized.
Yep.
16 penny typically.
Yep.
Even though 8 pennies are easier to get in there.
Yeah.
Last episode, you guys also said to put a J hook in the concrete on the pillar.
Correct.
So how does the J hook come in with this apparatus here?
So that threaded bolt would come up through there.
Gotcha.
The upside to using these and sleeve anchors or expansion bolts is that once your piers are poured and the tops are all nice and smooth, you go back from your batter boards, you run your strings over there, and now you can get exact centers for your posts. If you were to put the J bolts in and you're off, then that particular post base may not work as well because it's going to automatically throw your post off center. So a lot of times it's better to go back and drill it. It's not quite as strong, but if the concrete cures enough, you're not going to blow it apart.
Right, right. And we've also just re-drilled that hole in the bottom of these, elongated a little bit so that you could get it exactly where you wanted it.
Right.
Then you throw a fender washer on there and bolt it down so that way it's secure.
And there are some that are actually available that way where the hole's in the middle, but it actually has a removable fender washer. So you pop it out, move the thing around.
Yep.
So again, it goes back to what are you buying? That particular one that's in this picture, it's got to be right on.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, otherwise you're working it. So
aesthetically though, the next picture is going to show us a 4x4. There's 4x4s. And it works structurally, it's sound, but it's kind of spindly looking, and so well,
and the other thing is you notice the sway bracing everywhere.
Yep, because it's so high.
That's a fairly large deck to have on 4x4 posts with what looks like to be a 10 to 12 foot spacing. So when you're on that deck with 20 people and you're all kind of dancing to something, that deck will start racking left and right, and what it does, it pulls loose from the wall. So the sway bracing helps eliminate that, but if you had larger posts and closer together, it'd definitely be a lot sturdier.
Right. So then you have the next picture, which is showing a
just noticed there's a lawnmower under there.
Go back.
There's lawnmower storage area.
All right, zoom in. Oh yeah, look at that.
There it is. That's why the deck's so high. It needed more storage area.
There you go.
So it makes you wonder if we put something on the bottom on the joist before we put the decking on there to keep the rain off the mower.
That's right. It's an Insta shed also. See, it's
Insta shed.
It's double duty.
Yes.
So then.
Then.
Next up, see here they use 6x6. It's a little beefier looking, a little sturdier looking. Aesthetically, I like it a lot better. And then you can see on the bottom there, they actually just wrapped those 6x6s and even made them look thicker and heavier. But
even those arched panels.
Yep.
Act as sway braces because they've tied it all together.
Yep. And
so it gives you a nice look. It's probably, you know, a little too nice to stick your lawnmower under, but
Hey, a John Deere, you can put your John Deere anywhere and it looks
that's
good.
right.
It looks good. Don't knock it. So you can pick, your architect may tell you what size to put in there, but aesthetically, it's up to you. You can use the 4x4s if you're wanting to save a little bit of money, or you can use the 6x6s if aesthetically you like that thicker, beefier look.
Well, it gives you a lot stronger deck, and then of course your posts are much sturdier, so your railing's better.
Yep.
So.
All right, there we go. Okay, so beam locations and sizes. We've got another little chart for you here. So there you go. So if you're using a 2x8, you can do a 5' 9" spacing between your posts. If you're using a double 2x10, that's 6' 8", and if you're using a double 2x12, that's 8 foot apart on your spacing for your posts. So, and that is, the way they're showing it there is actually just a single. I don't see him. The picture isn't actually showing a double. But does it make a difference, Rich, if you just nailed a 2x12 on either side of the post, or should they be nailed together?
No, I don't think it really matters, but then again, that's just my opinion, so I can wait the email from the engineer again. But no, when we usually do beams or headers, it'll tell you that there's a nailing pattern, that they're nailed together, and it's 3 rows of 16 pennies, 12 inches apart, whatever. So I'm going to say that, yes, it does matter. You do want them put together. Now, what we'll typically do is, instead of setting them right on top, I might do a lap joint, you know, half lap on the top of the post, and then I can through bolt the beams to that post and then just take the top off the post, and that keeps it from racking. So I think that's where most people end up going, and putting one on each side, because with the post running through, it keeps it from racking, but you're not really sitting on a double 2x12. You're sitting on 2 2x12s, which is not the same. So again, and we talked about post spacing last week also, because the other thing that comes into play here is the weight, the load. So in last week's episode, we talked about getting your posts and beams figured out based on a 50 pound per square foot load, which is 40 pounds live, 10 pounds dead load. And that will affect it. So you bring all this together and it starts dictating what you need to have there.
Exactly. So there you go. So then next up, you can, where's that beam going to be? You can inset it so that it's flush, or you can do the next picture, which is showing them underneath. So you can support them either way.
And underneath is typically easier, because then you can have your joist run all the way across from one. You know, if your deck's going to have a 16-foot projection, you can buy 16 footers and then just put that beam out there at, 10 feet or whatever. The one thing odd in that picture is that if I was going to have a 16-foot deck, I think I'd have my beam at 8. I just split it in half. I don't see much reason to have 16 foot and put it at 12. Because you're going to have a lot of bounce in that first 12 and nothing in the last 4. That would be adequate if you're doing a cantilever where the joists were sticking past another 3 feet past the second beam. But the other thing is your beam, if you go back to the last one where it's in the deck and look at the grade, that deck is being built pretty much on the ground. So you do not want earth to wood contact. So if you look at that, most of the joists are above it, but right there near the bottom of the picture, I see dirt up against that beam. That dirt needs to be removed before you install decking. That will promote decay, easy ramp for bugs.
And it's that moisture now can wick out of the ground into the wood. And you notice they've got joist hangers everywhere on this, and then even on the outside double beams, there's joist hangers in all those. Which, when you're sitting on top, there's different straps you need to use. And you can see on this one, they've got different types of straps to secure that. And I noticed right in here, this looks like a beam that they've got set in the ground.
Like a beam under the ledger?
So they've got the ledger on there, and then they've got this beam, and then these 2 out here, which is odd spacing, but okay.
Again, I don't know what they're doing under that deck. There may be a reason. Maybe he's got 2 lawnmowers. I don't know.
Well, you got the riding lawnmower, and then you got the push to
Right.
get underneath there. So
Yeah,
you
I don't
need
know.
more spacing.
Maybe he's got a pop-up camper. I still don't know why I put the deck right below his windows.
Yep, I have no idea. Okay,
So the next episode will be removing that window to put in the patio door.
correct. That's exactly
Yes.
how.
Okay.
This one here.
Yes.
That's exactly what I'll be doing there.
I mean, that's what I'm looking at. Like, it looks like the deck goes right to the windowsill.
Yep, it's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the other thing you can watch out for is right there. We were just talking about all the joist hangers, and
Yeah.
is there anybody else other than Simpson? Strong tie?
I think, but I couldn't come up with anybody. I mean, if you go online and look up Simpson strong tie and just look for whether it's hold down straps, anti-lift straps, beam pockets. I mean, what they make is insane.
Yeah.
The amount of inventory they must carry all over the country.
Yes.
But they have a hanger that will meet your need.
Yeah. Whatever it is.
If you can figure out the chart.
Yep. They've got it. And they've got all the hangers, but they also have all the fasteners. So, you know, a particular type of hanger, and an architect will specify a hanger and a fastener. So, and they'll be designed for that purpose. So, if you need them double galvanized, you need stainless steel, Simpson Tie is going to have all of that stuff for you. And just if you go to strongtie.com, they're not a sponsor. They don't even know we're doing this, but they're the people to go to without a question.
Yeah.
So, next picture.
And we use it all the time. It's spec'd out in all our engineering for us for hurricane. And people don't realize is that gravity is not your enemy. It's uplift.
Right.
So yes, we strap everything down, down, down. And that is a great picture of uplift straps.
Yep.
On the joist.
Yep. And you can see the posts are all secured. They've got strong tie, all these different types of fasteners and strapping plates to secure that, hold it in place.
So another note too, though, is so normally when I would attach a joist to a beam, you'd take 16 penny double galvanized nails and you're toe nailing through that joist into the top of that beam.
Correct.
And what it typically does is it splits the joist.
Yep.
You know, they crack. So you're weakening it. So when you do this method, you don't have to nail the joist to the beam. You actually just use your hangers to secure everything, pull everything tight, shim it, whatever you need to do.
Yep.
And you get something that lasts far longer with less damage to the wood that you just paid a premium on.
Right. It's going to be stronger and last longer. So, I mean, that's perfect. So,
and those things are not that expensive, you know, $4 or $5 a piece, whatever.
Right.
Handful of nails.
It's the labor to install them. That's and the time. That's the
well,
killer.
you get I mean, if you're a framer, you have the gun for the joist hanger nails and makes it much faster.
Yep. This is true. This is true. Okay. Next up, we have our joist spacing. So if we're going to run our decking across this way, are we going to run it on a 45 out this way? That's going to determine the spacing, isn't it? Or is it all the same, Rich?
Yeah, no. If you're running perpendicular to your joist, so let's say I got, 2x8 or 2x10 joists there, and I want to run perpendicular to them, then I can go on 16-inch centers. But most decking, if you're going to run it on a 45 or do some kind of design, then you're going to want to change that framing up to 12 inches on center.
Right.
So that your spans are shorter. So on a 16-inch center, the diagonal is going to be, 40 inches or something. Well, decking's not designed for that, right? You're going to have bounce in that.
Right.
And don't hold me to that 40 inches. I just pulled a number out of my head. It's another email.
Now,
I'll get my construction master and get you the exact number shortly.
Yes. Now, here's the thing. If you noticed how they've got all this blocking on the ends and on the corners, that's because they're going to picture frame that decking. So they're going to run a couple boards around it and put a border on it and then have that decking inset. So if you want to have that look, this is the kind of framing and blocking you need to do before you try putting that decking down. Because if you don't do this now, it makes putting that decking down even more difficult. You're trying to go back and fit it in underneath so that you can support the decking properly. So this is a great way to get that blocking in there so that you can.
And there's nothing wrong with doubling up a joist where that joint's going to be so that you've got full 1.5 inch bearing, because The treated lumber, I mean, if you have a moisture meter and you want to check treated lumber, my moisture meter with treated lumber is usually a hammer. Hit it once. When you get splashed, I'd call that about 110% moisture content. So you can do a beautiful deck, but as that stuff dries out, it shrinks.
Oh, yeah.
And it starts pulling away. So trying to split joints on an 1.5-inch board, 3/4 inch, each way, they start shrinking, pulling away. You just don't end up with the bearing that you thought you had. So wherever you're going to do something decorative, it's not a bad idea to just double up the joist, give yourself 3 inches to work with, and you'll have something that'll be much more durable. And again, in your total cost, a couple of more boards. I mean, if that $40 is going to kill you, you're probably not doing the right deck.
Yeah, exactly it. So the last thing I want to talk about, and again, I'm not sure that you guys are doing this in Florida, but we've started doing this the past couple of years, and that is our joist tape. So before we put our decking down, we're running this joist tape on all the tops of all of our floor joists. And what we found over the years is that you take a deck apart that's maybe 15, 20 years old, because the decking's starting to go, the framing would be okay, but where all those fasteners were into this wood, it's starting to rot out. And in this case, where there's a beam, that moisture gets between them, and it can't dry out. There's no way for that air to move.
It just follows the nail or screw right down into the wood.
Exactly. So by putting this, lack of a better word, the joist tape or the ice and water shield.
Flashing.
Yeah. That will seal around that fastener when it goes through, and now that'll preserve the tops of all your floor joists. So even if your decking goes bad in 20 years, the framing underneath is going to be nice and clean and solid, and you'll be able to continue using it again and just put new decking on.
So where I'm at in Southwest Florida, we don't build decks at all. I mean, I don't know anybody that has a deck. I mean, it might be a dock.
Okay.
But the docks are typically done in a similar manner. But we actually do that on the reverse, because all of our wood trusses and everything sit on concrete tie beams.
Okay.
So we have to put down ice and water shield. It's just a different membrane, but a peel and stick. It's a rubber-based, asphalt impregnated, self-adhering, but we put that on top of our concrete beam so that the wood or bearing plates are not sitting on concrete.
Excellent.
So again, same exact reason though. Stop water, stop wicking.
Correct.
Correct.
So this leads us to our last item that we want to talk about with our framing, and that's proper flashing. So you can't just take this thing and bolt it to the siding and just let it go.
Caulk it. Caulk it.
Yeah, I know, but that's what all these failures are around. Because this piece right here is the problem, and you want to have that flashing that goes from here across the top and then up underneath the house wrap. So that's underneath your Tyvek or your house paper, whatever it is. It goes all the way behind.
If you're having a new house built and you're getting a deck with the house, that deck ledger must be in place before they really start siding the house, because that is a key point, that deck flashing needs to go up the wall, and your house wrap needs to go over that. So we were joking before the show about an old statement I always said about tucking your raincoat into your pants. So if you were to put that flashing over the top of that house wrap and the water runs down that house wrap, it's just going to run behind the flashing.
Right.
So it's important. Now, another note is that drawing, actually, when we looked at this, it actually says, galvanized or steel flashing.
Yep.
It says, L-shaped painted or galvanized metal flashing. Okay. Again, that newer treated lumber, the ACQ and stuff can be corrosive. So ice and water shield or a double rubber membrane there works great. But what we really liked about this picture was it really shows how to flash the top of that ledger and up behind the wall siding and house wrap properly.
Yep. When I was looking for pictures, I found way more pictures of it incorrectly installed than correctly when I did a search for this exact thing. Deck to wall flashing, and I got hundreds of pictures that were incorrect, and I found this one and a few others that were correct. So we want to make sure that you're installing this correctly, that the flashing's going in there correctly. The biggest key, the other thing that I saw was a lot of people using aluminum. So
and I was guilty of that early on when they changed from what was it? I don't remember what the old stuff was when they went to ACQ from
the arsenic based.
arsenic based. They never put out a word that it was corrosive and aluminum could be eaten in 6 months.
Yes.
Because we used to use roll aluminum for flashing. We'd bend it and make it purdy and do all the right stuff,
Right.
not knowing that it would be eaten away in 6 months.
Yep.
So, but I will notice too, you notice the bolts in that ledger are incorrect?
Yep. 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 That's it.
So that guy knows how to flash, but his bolts are wrong.
There. Yeah. But see, now this is part of the reason why, because now that would crack through there. That bolt's in the same spot, it cracks, and it just pretty soon that splits and falls apart. And it's
Right,
not
so now you end up with half a ledger.
correct. And it just
Agreed.
falls off. So that's the problem with doing it that way. So that ended up being educational anyway, even though it's wrong. How you like that?
Correct.
All right. So next week we're going to get into some decking and decking options, and we'll kind of talk about this stuff. You can see it right down in here on this deck. It's pretty nice. Klein has been sending us some stuff. We're going to pass that on to you guys. And got some stuff here. So if you see something you like, stay tuned. You know, leave a note below. Let us know which piece you might want. And we're going to have to set some rules here. We're not sending these out to India or China or...
Robbie rules.
Yes. This U.S., lower 48. That's going to be the rules for this one. So just in case. All right. With that, I'll say... subscribe below, click the bell if you like it. That way you get notified next time. Leave us a note below.
Yep.
You can also go to
Yep.
mightyhouse.net and sign up for the newsletter there. Just click on the Contact Us page and boom, done. You'll be ready to go. So with that, keep it square and level.
Until
next time.
Until next time. There we go. That almost like came off like we planned it once before.
Yeah,
That was one of your good ones, so now we should probably keep that one, and then we can just stop, and then you can...
Maybe, can you just overdub that?
They could just be closing forever.
Right. Right.